Good evening, everyone. So I apologize, had some tech issues, but I am in. So hopefully you can hear me. Um, Drop a note and let me know if the volume is working. All right, sounds good. So you can hear. All right, so we are building leaders one Lego at a time. So once again, I do apologize for the tech issues. So we're just going to roll through. We're going to make up for time. And so hopefully you are having a good workshop thus far. So just a little bit about me. I am definitely a proud graduate of Florida A&M University and also North Central University for grad school. In the last leg of my doctorate program in business and public administration and a host of other things. And so I'm excited to be with you all today for the Student Leadership Institute, but specifically to just share with the advisors. So really for the workshop, we're just going to go over three objectives. We want to talk about the importance of understanding how leaders fit in, especially new leaders, whether you're a new advisor, whether you're working with new leaders as you have freshmen coming on campus, as you start to build new leaders, but really talking about building a team, understanding that there is really no set blueprint. It's trial and error when it comes to the whole team concept, understanding that everybody's different. And that's what I love about Legos. They're all different, but when you really understand the difference, you're able to bring everybody together and build one masterpiece. And then we're going to talk about some strategies to hopefully keep you as an advisor motivated and encouraged, because not only are you working with student leaders, but you yourself have to be able to deal with and manage all of the things that are taking place and are happening. So this is an icebreaker. So if you have a sheet of paper, if you're able to, really want you to like draw these 9 dots, and then the objective is to connect all 9 dots with 4 straight lines without lifting your pen or pencil from the paper. So if anyone gets it done, jump in the chat and just say that you got it done, so we can kind of talk about it. All right, so hopefully you've had a chance to do it. Switch back over. And so if you had the chance to do it, ideally you should have come up with something similar to this. This is one correct answer. It's not all. There are multiple ways. There are multiple ways to actually do this. But really understanding that when we talk about leadership, understanding that each of these dots represent a player. So this can be students, administrators on campus, academic deans, your law enforcement or security staff on campus, your student affairs office, financial aid office. All of these things represent a dot. Housing represents a player in the system. Food services, all of these organizations play a piece. And so really as leaders, the big piece is understanding how everyone comes together to complete the task, but really figuring out that as a leader, as an advisor, you've got to help your student leaders connect all of these dots. And so if they're planning for programming on campus or they're trying to put together an event, you've got to help them connect all of the dots. And so if they need to work with law enforcement, if they need to work with the student affairs office, if they need to work with another organization, if they need to work with their Greek affairs or Greek coordinator, really making sure that they understand how they connect all of these dots. And oftentimes when you're worrying about or trying to actually connect the dots, you realize you have to think outside of the box. You have to go outside of what you've typically done and you really have to stretch yourself. One of John Maxwell's principles, when you talk about the 15 laws of invaluable growth, one of the laws is the law of the rubber band. And so I love that law because it talks about how you have to stretch yourself in order to grow. And stretching is never comfortable. Stretching is never something that any of us really like to do, because we get comfortable. We kind of get that whole complacent piece about us. But when we start to stretch ourselves, we start to really grow ourselves as a leader. And as advisors, your job is to really push and to stretch your students. And so finding those ways to not just give them the answer, not just tell them this is what you need to go and do, but you really have to kind of coach, mentor, give them that guidance and allow them to stretch themselves, allow them to be like that rubber band to where they're going back and forth, having to strategize, having to navigate, and really trying to figure out how do they push themselves to the next level. One of the other things when we talk about leadership, Simon Sinek has a TED talk about the why, and he talks about the golden circle. And so when we talk about the golden circle, we really have to understand the why behind it. So we have to realize that there is a face behind every dot. And so when we're working with our young people, our students to really grow, you got to understand that they're people. And so you have a why as an advisor, but you also have to get to know the why of your students. Understand why they became the president of the organization. Why did they want to join this organization? Why did they feel like out of all of the organizations on campus, this was the best fit for them? And when you really understand their why, you're able to push and you're able to stretch them. And sometimes it's going to be hard to connect with every dot on this. It's not just on the example, but it's going to be hard to connect with every student. Some students you're going to have more in common with than other students, but really making that effort to make sure that no one gets left behind, making sure that no one is left out becomes very key in what we do as leaders. I'm just jumping back and forth to make sure that I haven't missed anything. Haven't missed anything in the chat box. And so when we talk about the history of Legos, I kind of like to share some of this history just because it gets to the point. And so honestly, when Lego started out, these were wooden toys. And so Lego was chosen as the company name because it comes from the Danish words leg and got, which means play well. So in Latin, it means I study well, or I put together. So really understanding how is it that Legos connect between student and campus leadership. So the motto and the vision of Lego is inspire and develop builders of tomorrow. And so as advisors and campus leaders, you should be able to relate to this motto because as a campus leader, you build people. And you're not just building students. Oftentimes you're working in offices. And so you have peers, you have colleagues, you have other professionals on campus that you work with. But part of it is you have to understand that people bring baggage to the table. So some of these young people, some of these students, some of your peers, they've been abused, not just physically, but they have the emotional abuse. They come to college with a lot on their plate. Many of them are in college and they're still trying to support their families back home. And so I remember in undergrad, I had a lot of friends who were working not to support themselves, but they still had a sense of obligation that they needed to support their families. And so you have to understand that you will have those situations. You will have situations to where some of your students in your organizations are involved in a domestic violence situation. They're new to dating, they're on campus, they're living this adult life, and they get in relationships or they're battling substance abuse. And so all of this baggage are the things that your students bring to the table. And as an advisor, you may be advising them on a program and you realize you've got to spend time and really talk to them just about life stuff. One of my best mentors was an advisor for an organization I was a part of my spring semester of my freshman year. And to this day, he's still a mentor because we would talk about organizational stuff, but then it really just came down to me trying to navigate life. And he was that person that really helped understand, really helped shape, mold, and guide me through a lot of that adulthood piece that I was trying to figure out. But as an advisor, you build character in your students. You teach them work ethic. You teach them time management. You teach them how to deal with conflict. You teach them how, when things are not going right, or if the program fails because no one showed up, you teach them that even if one person showed up, that's still a success. And so you really have to work to build that. But then you offer hope as an advisor. You're the person who tells them that it's going to be okay. Yes, only one person showed up to the event, but what do we need to do to make the next event better? So you, as an advisor, you're a part of outreach and you're a part of recruitment. So when students or high school students are visiting the campus, as an advisor, it really may be imperative that you put on that recruiter hat and really help bring students to your particular university or to your particular organization, because you understand what it's like to be a campus leader. But then also you're building your staff, whether you have a staff that work for you or you have a staff that you're a part of, a team, whether you're part of the Office of Student Activities, whether you're part of financial aid, housing department, whatever team you're a part of, you have to inspire your peers and your coworkers to be builders of tomorrow. Everything that you're doing is to make the next generation better. And then lastly, you can't forget, you have to build yourself. Oftentimes as as campus leaders, I remember watching my advisors and watching the adults on campus. They spent so much time invested in the programming and in the student life and campus life that they never took time for themselves. They never spent time with family. They never took a vacation. They never did anything for themselves. And you can't forget that you can't pour from an empty cup. And so many times as advisors, as campus leaders, you put other people ahead of you, and you put people, and which is good. It's good to put your students' needs first. But if you're constantly giving and you're never taking the time to refuel, you're never taking the time to rejuvenate, you're never taking the time to really just step back and assess what's happening around you, you'll start to get burnt out. And no matter how much you love student affairs, no matter how much you love being involved on campus, once you get to that place to where you're burnt out, you're no longer any good for yourself or the students that you're trying to work with, because you don't have anything else to give. And so you've got to take those down moments. You've got to take the weekend or whatever time you get to yourself and really do something that's refilling you. So whether that's going for a walk or taking a vacation, or, in this COVID thing, figuring out how you can safely interact with other professionals or with your family, with your spouse, with your kids, whatever the case may be, you have to find something that's going to fill you back up. And oftentimes what that really may mean is you've got to find you a good book to read, or go to a conference, when we're able to kind of get back to life as usual. Do something that's going to benefit you, so that once you get back to the office, once you get back on Monday morning, you have a fresh cup that you can now pour and really give and invest in somebody else. So just some leadership lessons from Legos. Hopefully everyone that's watching, you've had a chance to play with Legos. Now, if you've ever stepped on a Lego, that's another story. But hopefully you've had the chance to actually play with Legos. And if we were face to face, we would do this activity to where everyone would have one Lego. And I dare you to do this with your students. Maybe your next meeting that you have with them or whatever, and you're looking for an activity, give everyone a Lego. I mean, you can go to Walmart, you can go to Target, buy a Lego set, but give everybody one Lego. And the challenge is split the group into 2 or into 3 or into 4. But everybody in that particular group has to come together, and they have to figure out how to make whatever it is they want to make. But then you only get your one piece that you contribute. So you have to figure out, how do you take your one piece and how do you contribute it to the big vision overall? And watching the group dynamics, you'll see a natural leader will evolve who really tries to take on the role of master builder. So really trying to set the vision and say, okay, we're going to build a castle, or we're going to build a doghouse. And then they kind of set this vision of what it's supposed to look like. and then everybody else starts to chip in and say, oh no, I should put my piece here, or if you put your piece there, this is what's going to happen. And so after a while, give them a few minutes, and you really just start to see everybody working together, because the goal is, if we're going to build something, whether we're building something small or we're building something big, whatever the case may be, whatever it is we're building, everybody has a part to play. No matter the shape of your Lego, no matter the size of it, no matter the color of it, every Lego is important. And that's the same thing that we have to impress upon our students, that each of them are important no matter what it is they're doing, whether you are the president of the organization or you're just a member of the organization, whether you've been in for 3 years or you're just now joining this year, everybody's important and everybody has a piece to play. And so this activity drives home the notion that if everyone plays their part, if everyone recognizes that we're all unique, we're all different, but we work together, we can build a masterpiece. And it may not look like someone else's masterpiece, but it's ours. It's something that we built together. It's something that we gave our time to. It's something that we really worked hard to make sure we were able to accomplish. And so, according to an article from Forbes magazine, there are 5 lessons we can learn. And so part of that is starting with what success looks like. So you have to, maybe as the advisor, work with the leadership team of that particular organization to really ask them, what's the vision for the organization? What's your goals that you want to accomplish this year, and how are we going to accomplish them? Because once we understand what success looks like, then we can really understand what we're building toward. But then you've got to consider the interchangeable parts. Understand that each piece is different. Some Legos are wider than they are shorter. Some are longer. Some have more pieces than others. And so really understanding that each part is interchangeable. So just because you put your piece down doesn't mean it's going to stay there. Just because you're the president of the organization this year doesn't mean you're going to still be the president next year. So understanding that everybody's interchangeable and no one is really stuck or permanent when it comes to any of these things. Instructions are only so helpful. So I'm typically the person who will open up a board game or will open up a phone, a tablet, whatever, and won't read the instructions. And so if you've ever bought a Lego set, there are instructions that will show you how to build whatever it is you're trying to build, but some of the pieces may be missing. So instructions are great, but allow for creativity. And as the advisor, as the adult, if you will, yes, you have in your mind what you want them to achieve, but allow them to be creative. Allow the students in the organization to be innovative. Allow them to try different things, because they only can try from failing sometimes. And so it's okay if they fail. One of the things we tell people at work is, fail big, fail hard, and let's move on. Figure out what didn't work. Figure out what we need to change. Let's go back. Let's change it. But it's more fun when people are working together. So get everybody involved. If your leadership team, they're struggling to figure out what that success looks like, do a weekend retreat or do a work session one evening with your organization. Bring all of the members together and break them up into groups and have them do some brainstorming sessions on what do we want our organization to be, or what legacy do we want to leave behind, so that in 5 years, when the next group of students are coming into this organization, they can look back and say, hey, 5 years ago, this group of students, the class of 2020 or the class of 2021, they made this legacy happen. And now all we need to do is build upon that legacy. And then the quality of the final product relies on the input of imagination. So no matter what that final product is, whatever that the outcome of that brainstorming session, whatever the outcome of at the end of the school year, when we look back and we start to assess, did we get it right? Did we do it right? That final product, it relies on the input of the imagination. So if we didn't have everyone putting in work, if we didn't have everyone invested in the organization, then that output is not going to look the best, because we have very little people contributing to what success was going to look like. We have very few people contributing to that final product. But if everybody is bringing their Lego to the table, bringing their skill set, bringing their imagination, bringing their creativity, bringing their ideas, but not even that, on campus, they have to bring their work ethic. So if everyone's bringing themselves to the table, that final output is going to look great because everybody's been invested in it. And so, as an advisor, you play many different roles. You play coach, you play mentor, you play strategist, you play not fire starter, but you put out fires. So when the students are not getting along, you've got to jump in and you've got to help navigate those situations. But part of it too is you've got to really develop them as a leader so that once they've left whatever campus, if it's Tennessee State, if it's another organization, another university, once they've left your campus, once they've left your organization, when they go into the real world, when they've walked across that stage, it's not so much the nuances of the organization that will really shape them. Yes, they had fun while on campus, but it's the leadership lessons that you taught them that they will carry into the workplace. They'll look back and remember, oh, I know how to deal with conflict because when we had this going on, my advisor told me that I needed to do X, Y, and Z. And that's the intent. That's the purpose behind organizations on campus, if you ask me, is to really prepare and develop and make sure that when our students are walking across the stage and they're entering the workforce or they're going back to their respective communities, they're not going back the same way they left. They're coming back with more resources, not just a degree, not just, yes, they went to class for 4 years, but because of them being involved on campus, they've developed these soft skills to where now they know how to work with other people. They know how to understand that everybody in the workplace isn't going to look like them. Everybody isn't going to talk like them. But because of the things that they learned from you as an advisor, they're able to take and apply and put that into practice. The things I do now is because of what I learned in undergrad. I remember my director of student activities. When it comes to budgets and when it comes to really understanding how to handle finances and how to project, I learned that from my time in student government from my advisor, Miss Inch, to this day. And Miss Inch just passed a month and a half ago. And I've been out of college now. I graduated in 2011. But I remember conversations with Miss Inge. When it was time for an event to happen, I was there helping her buy the stuff. And so, event planning and making sure you have enough and always planning for what can happen or what might happen, risk management. Wherever I go, any organization I'm in, if we're having an event, I'm always thinking 10 steps ahead because of Miss Inge. And so you've got to be somebody's afterthought, meaning that once they are 10 years post undergrad, they should still remember a conversation that they had with you. It should be a conversation about growth or a conversation about it's okay to fail or a conversation about conflict resolution, whatever that conversation may be. Let that be your legacy as an advisor, as a mentor, as a campus leader, that somebody's going to look back and they're going to say, I learned because of this person. And honestly, that's the intent there, is to guide, to mentor. But once you've really graduated and you've left, having that lifelong impact on a student, I believe, is any advisor's true dream and goal. But sometimes leaders don't come already assembled. And so just like Legos, when you buy them, it's a box of Legos and it's up to you to put stuff together. So as an advisor, it's up to you to assemble these leaders together. It's up to you to help them navigate how to put the pieces together. And it takes time, effort, and commitment. You can't just work with leaders or a freshman class and expect them to have it all together. Invest some time. You got to realize that it's going to be some effort. It's going to probably even be some sleepless nights because sometimes people don't get it the first time. You've got to keep saying the same thing over and over. But there will be some frustrations, and how you handle it is critical. It's not just critical for you as the professional on campus, it's critical for what you model to the students. Because if they see you get frustrated, if they see you get agitated, aggravated, if every time something doesn't go right, you throw a tantrum or you cuss or you get upset with another department on campus, in their mind, that's okay. So when they get frustrated, when something doesn't go their way, they start to deal with the situation the same way that their advisor deals with the situation. And students, I remember just looking back over the organizations I was in, we modeled our advisor. So you could just think of an organization and say, "Oh, I know who their advisor is because of how the students act." So you knew the students on campus that were well dressed, or if it was a certain day, a Wednesday, they're going to be dressed and they're going to be doing this, this, and this, and this is how they carry themselves on campus because their advisor didn't tolerate that. But then you also knew who the fun advisors were. So if you wanted to get away with stuff, if you wanted to do whatever you wanted in your organization and you wanted to get away and do programming that might not have always been approvable, you knew, okay, I need to go be in this organization because this advisor really doesn't show up to meetings, doesn't really care. They'll sign off on stuff and they'll never be present. Versus if you knew you had a Miss Barnes as an advisor at FAM, you understood Miss Barnes was going to show up. I don't care what was happening. The meeting could have been at 10 at night. Miss Barnes was going to be sitting there and she wasn't going to leave until the last person left. And so it depends on what kind of advisor you want to be, what kind of input you really want to have. And then really understanding that every Lego is different. Diversity, inclusion, equity, all of that stuff sounds great, but it's the practice of it. Even if you're at an HBCU and all of the students are African American and everybody's doing great and we have Black excellence and we're doing it for the culture, all of that stuff sounds great. But you got to understand that even in that situation, those students are different. They come from a different background. They come from a different upbringing. They come from different communities. They come from different socioeconomic statuses. They come from different mindsets. They have different spiritual beliefs. They have different sexual orientations. Whatever the case is, they're still different, even though they look the same. And oftentimes, I think at HBCUs, we forget that even though all of us look the same, we still have our differences. And so, as an advisor, when you're working with student leaders, you've got to realize that each of them are different. And so, you've got to take the time, take the effort, and really be committed to learning who they are, learning what they're about, understanding that many of your students may have raised their siblings. So, figuring out how does their work ethic match someone who may have been spoon fed everything they ever wanted and never really had to work for anything, or they haven't had their first job yet. Some people didn't have to work in high school or didn't have to have a summer job versus some that had to. Some have been working since they got into high school. And so, whatever the differences are as a leader, as an advisor, you've really got to work to build that up. And I talked about John Maxwell's 15 laws of invaluable growth. One of the other laws is the law of pain, which I'm going to get to. But leadership is a purpose driven art. It's purposeful. Everything that you do should have a purpose behind it. And it shouldn't just be a spur of the moment thing. It has to be thought out and it has to be well developed and really have intent behind it. And so part of this, and I know with time, we talk about leadership is painful, so I'm not going to play the actual clip. But in this movie, the Lego movie, Emmett is seen as being courageous and vulnerable. So he's kind of thrown up as a leader. He didn't think he was a great leader, wasn't expecting to be in a leadership role. And as soon as he got up there to start to talk about what he was going to do, people started judging him. Oh, who is he? He's nobody. I've done this. I've done all of these things. But it really took someone to point out that Emmett had the potential. And that's what I want to drive home in this particular, had we had time to watch the clip from YouTube from the movie, is that leadership is painful. And oftentimes, when we talk about leadership to our students, or even when we as professionals are sitting in workshops and conferences, we hear all of the good things about leadership, and we see, promotion can come from it, and accolades can come, and we can be featured in a journal article, or we build up our LinkedIn presence, or we build up our resume, and people know us on campus, and all of those things are great. But many times leaders fail because they didn't realize that there is a painful side to leadership. You can't always safely vent to everyone. As an advisor, as a campus leader, no matter how much you love your students, please don't vent to your students about your colleagues, about other departments, about other administrators, because there's a thin line between you as the professional adult and them as the student. And yes, they may be adults on campus, but you still got to recognize that there are levels in this relationship. And so you as the professional have got to find a safe place to where you're able to vent and you're able to kind of experience those growth pains, but not compromise who you are as a leader. The students in your organization should not be your best friends. Um, and I work on a college campus as an adjunct professor, and I have friends that are in education, and that's the constant conversation we have, especially when you're young in the profession or you're young on campus. People will gravitate to you because the generations are so close, but you've got to remind yourself that you're the adult. And I was having this conversation with one of my frat brothers. I shouldn't be able to look at a group of students and the adult and not be able to tell the difference who the adult is in the room. If it's nothing wrong with having a good time with your students, it's nothing wrong with building that rapport and having those good relationships, but people should always be able to walk in a room and understand who's the adult, who's the advisor, and who's the student. And sometimes, especially on college campuses, it people find themselves in compromising positions because they forgot they were the adult and not the friend of the organization. And all of my advisors would tell us, like, listen, I'm still an adult. We can laugh, we can play, but we're not hanging out. We're not doing X, Y, and Z. And so you've got to set those boundaries. And people on your team are drilling holes. So ships don't sink because um, water often gets in the boat. Yes, water can get in the boat, but you'll notice that the people who are drilling holes, they're letting the ship sink, but then they find themselves able to get off before anything's happened. So you'll have students who will downplay the organization, will talk bad about the organization, and then they'll leave, or they'll be a part and then they'll leave because something didn't go their way. And now this is the worst organization. You're the worst advisor. All of things happen. So be mindful that there will be some painful times, because as an advisor, you're giving all of this time, but then you feel like there's never ever anything good coming from it. And there's a book called The Painful Side of Leadership. And it says that leadership is like being a shepherd, and sheep always tend to run toward trouble. So no matter how good of an advisor you are, no matter how many times you set boundaries and you set expectations, you will still have those students that will try you, that will push the envelope. You said that the program needed to be done by 9 o'clock, and it's going on 10 o'clock, and they're still trying to do it because they're trying to see, what are you going to do? Are you going to stop it? Are you going to allow it to happen? And so being an advisor is painful. And I'm pretty sure many of you can attest to that. But then also understand, people leave leaders, not agencies, companies, organizations, however you want to look at it. People leave leaders. So don't be that leader that is you're so strict and you have so many rules that people don't want to follow you, or you say one thing but you do something else. Because people, especially students, especially this generation, if they don't see you modeling what it is you're expecting of them, they will leave. They will go find another organization on campus, and organizations on campus are a dime a dozen. There is always there is a club for everything. And so you've got to make sure that you are setting a good example, you have boundaries, and you are holding people to a certain standard. but don't be so over the top and so strict to where people don't want to be a part of the organization because you snuffed out all of the fun. And I know we are coming close to the end, but if you ever get a chance, go on YouTube, listen to Denzel's speech that he gave at a graduation, because one of the things he talks about is it doesn't matter how bad you are doing. If you have somebody that speaks positive things in your life, if you have somebody that can encourage you, that can motivate you, and that can push you, you can go from having this 1.7 GPA like he had and really find yourself still being successful because you didn't allow the hurdles to stop you. And so I hope that as campus leaders, as advisors, as you're going through your course as a professional, your career, that even when you have those painful moments, understand that you're building leaders. And oftentimes when you're building one by one. They're Legos, and I like the analogy, but they're individuals. They all look different, they talk different, they act different. So really be mindful that you're gonna get students that don't appear to be the same, or what worked for one group of students beforehand may not work for the group of students that you have that you're working with right now, because they're different. And so just be open to learning and growing and finding new ways to do probably something that you've done for your entire career. Really be open to developing yourself so that you can be better as an advisor, but that you can adapt to the students that are coming in. Lead them, grow with them, allow them to experience their own leadership struggles, their own leadership pains, and be there to really help them along the way. And it is 4:20. And so I do want to be mindful of time, as I know the next session is about to start. And so thank you to those that hung out. I know we had some technical difficulties, and so I really wanted to make sure that I was able to get on. I hope that you all are able to enjoy the rest of the conference. It's been very well organized and put together. And I'm going to hang out and we'll be in a little networking area a little later on. And so I hope you all enjoy the rest of your conference. And once again, I hope you also have a great and safe school year. Thank you, guys.